If you want some excitement, today you're going to join me a tavola, at the table, with stinco. Contrary to what you think, stinco is a luscious, wonderful piece of veal, the veal shank, roasted to golden perfection with rosemary and sage over Swiss chard and potatoes. Buongiorno, benvenuti. Sometimes my kitchen sizzles, sometimes my kitchen steams, sometimes my kitchen fries. Today, my kitchen is full of the aroma and the sounds of roasting. And we're gonna roast this magnificent piece of meat, stinco, il stinco. Stinco is the part of the veal, stinco di vitello, because there also could be a stinco di maiale, which is of pork, but this is stinco di vitello of veal. And it is the shank, the whole shank of the veal from the knee down. This is also the piece of meat that ossobuco is made out of. Exactly the same piece cut in half. Therefore, we're gonna proceed to brown it and then put all these aromatic vegetables and herbs and then roast it in the oven until it's golden brown. And with it, we'll make some Swiss chard and potatoes. Okay, so let's proceed. I'll pick up a little bit the heat here. And what's very important with raw meat before you begin to actually cook it is that you season it, that the salt goes all the way in. And it's a big piece of meat, therefore it will require some fresh. And you can just grate it right on the board and just roll the meat on the board then. There. Put some oil. We'll lightly flour it. Again, I don't want too much flour, just enough to caramelize on the meat. Why is this piece of meat so great? Well, because it has muscle. It is all muscle. It has a lot of cartilage. It has the bone. It has the marrow. It has all the makings of that wonderful sort of sticky texture to a good roast. I can make sure that the oil is hot. And you don't need to tie it. Whereas the ossobuco, when it's cut in half, you need to tie because you're cutting the muscle in half. This will stay all together. It'll sort of begin to fall off the bone, but it will stay all together. You don't need to tie it. While that is browning, we'll begin our vegetable for the base of the sauce. And I'm gonna wilt the vegetable in the same pot that I'm going to roast the stinco in. Okay. Some carrots, onions. The base of this sauce is carrots, onions, a little bit of garlic, sage, and loads of rosemary. I like the sweetness that onion gives to a sauce, especially when it's nice and caramelized. Okay. Let's salt the vegetables lightly. I'll add the garlic. Now, do you hear the sounds in my kitchen? You know when they Oh, look at this, how wonderful. And this is what you want when you're roasting meats, this caramelized effect. When we were planning on doing this show, they had all kinds of proposals, all kinds of sets and wonderful kitchens. And I said, no, I can't. I need to work in my kitchen because my kitchen is where I feel good, where I'm surrounded with all the things that I love, my family, my flowers. Now look at these wonderful peonies, which are in full bloom. Look at the roses. Look at the geraniums. This is from my garden. This is part of me, show or no show. And I tell them, I said, in my kitchen, I know the exact distance between one burner and the other, between my burner and the sink. And I can talk to you, to my audience, with ease because I know exactly where I'm going. So here we are in my kitchen, in my home, doing my thing. As the contorno in Italian is the side dish, and it's a general term that you can use for anything. We will make Swiss chard and potatoes. So I have here some potatoes boiling, and I'm going to add the Swiss chard to that. Now this is Swiss chard for the sake of time. I have washed some, but I wanted to show you. This is what Swiss chard looks like. And it's green chard. There's also red chard, which is wonderful. But I like the green chard. And the stems are also very good. You use the whole thing. Chop it fine. Sort of shred it. And put it in with the potatoes when the potatoes are halfway cooked. It is one of those side dishes that with one side dish, you get a multitude of flavors. You have the potatoes, the feeling, the comfort of mashed potatoes, and then you have the taste and the feeling of sautéed greens. But this whole meal is about comfort and food that hugs you. All right. Let me turn it on all sides. I want it nice and brown on all sides. That looks great. Let me add the herbs, rosemary, sage. I'm going to nestle the stinko right. The stinko is nestled in the vegetables. A little more salt for everything. And I'm going to deglaze it with some good wine. In this case, a nice Pinot Grigio. Nice acidity, good flavored wine. Because the ultimate result, the taste, reflects all the flavors that you put in before. So I get asked, can I use just cooking wine for cooking? Sure you could. But have you tasted cooking wine? And that's what you ultimately will get. So the better you use it, the better wine you use, the better the flavor in what you're doing. And we'll put some stock. And what we'll do now, when we put it in the oven, we want first all the liquid. It's going to permeate the meat and it's going to cook the meat. It's going to almost boil the meat. But then we're going to render it very low where it begins to roast. And all those flavors that have come out of the meat roast back into the meat. And now it is ready to go into the oven as it is. And here is the stinko, the roasted stinko. It's wonderful. It'll take about another 10, 15 minutes from the looks of it. This is just wonderful. You know, I get asked a lot of times, oh, Lidia, your skin looks so great. And I could swear it's the steam herb baths that I get all the time when I'm cooking. Okay, we'll just sort of turn it. Let all the sides get browned and moist. I'll teach you just a little secret when you roast. And that is to get that golden color to your roasts. You take some of the sauce that you're roasting. Take some honey, not too much, just a little bit of honey. And sort of mix it well. And then with this, you baste your meat in the last 10-15 minutes of cooking. Don't do it before because you really get mahogany colored roast meats. But 10-15 minutes before it finishes, just brush on this sauce. That's great. There we go. We'll put it back in the oven. And we'll go and make the contorno, the Swiss chard and potato, which has been boiling. Let me put the pot so it begins to warm up while we drain it. We'll drain the Swiss chard and potatoes. Drain it well. And some good olive oil. Okay, we'll begin the chard with some garlic. I love garlic. I have problem digesting it, but I love the flavor. So I just put extra and I crush it. So this way I get a lot of flavor and I can just pluck it out when the vegetable is ready. You want this to be golden, and then we'll put the vegetables. Stinko is a dish that is quite popular in Trieste. Trieste is a beautiful city. It's actually what it was my second home when I left Pola, and I'll tell you how that happened. It's a city in the Friuli Venezia Giulia, and it's nestled right at the end of the Julian Alps on the Adriatic. So therefore, the city is hugging the coast, beautiful port, with the steep cliffs right behind it. And it is notorious for la bora. The bora is the wind that sometimes blows up to 140 miles an hour in the city, because the warm sea air, the cold mountain air, create this swift change of air currents, and the bora is born. Do you know that I remember when I came to Trieste and I was 12, they had the cordoons, they had sort of cords on the street. It was blowing so hard that you had to hold when you walked. But the Triestini, as they call themselves, look forward to the bora because they feel that the bora cleans the city. Now, I'm going to cook and talk, so I'm going to interrupt myself to tell you what I'm doing. The garlic is golden, and I'm going to add the Swiss chard and potatoes. So, here it is. I'm going to season it now, completely, some raw olive oil, and I love raw olive oil because you really get to taste the flavor of the oil when you put it in like this at the end, rather than bringing it to high temperatures and letting all the aroma oils evaporate. This way you're capturing them in the food. Some pepper. And ultimately what you want to do, you want it like a rough mashed potatoes, but all together. What wonderful colors, what wonderful smells. The stinco is ready. And now I'll show you how we served it. Very typical. This is so typical of Trieste, the vegetables and all. But first we'll remove the stinco and make the sauce. It is soft, falling off the bone. Did you see the nice caramelization with just a touch of honey? So when you pick it out, help yourself. You don't want it. And all of this will squash everything out of as much as we can of the vegetables and make it into the natural gravy. I just pass it through a sieve and extract as much as possible of the vegetables. Now, I want to go back to Trieste, to Cianina. Cianina was a majestic woman, was a woman of jet black hair, even though she was about 68 when I remember her. She had a thick braid, sort of split in the middle and rolled in the back in a cocon. We used to call it cocon. That she had wonderful earrings, simple but wonderful, and she had a white skin, a beautiful white skin that looked like a peach. I think that she was the first that really made me sense what elaborated cuisine is all about. She was a personal chef. She was a chef of wealthy families. And in the morning, she would take me shopping. And I had a ball. We would go to Ponte Rosso. Ponte Rosso is the mercato in Trieste. And it was called Ponte Rosso because you had to cross a little bridge, a little red bridge, to get to this piazza where all the stalls were with the vegetables. Now, I'm going to go back and forth because I don't want you to miss anything. Collect everything with a little bit of stock and proceed. Well, the stalls that I remember were vibrant with produce, with oranges, whatever the fruit of the season, but mounds of it. And usually women would sell, and they even had a name. They were called vendirigole. And I remember they were like sirens luring you to come to their stall as you would pass by. And, you know, as I was holding my aunt's hand, I would just look back. And then if you went by and you went to somebody else's stall, they got mad at you. All that gentleness, sort of. And I couldn't figure it out, you know, how they can switch like that, but they did. When we did all our shopping for the day, for whatever meal she had planned, we tested everything, we tasted, we smelled. And I mean, just all these aromas are still lingering with me. Around 10:30, we would finish and we would have a merenda. It's very typical in Trieste, for that matter, in East there too, to have a 10:30 merenda. And merenda is a little snack. Now, they had around the mercato, they had this little sort of bar where you can have a stuzzichino, you can have a little bit of tripe, you can have a little bit of boiled pork with salt and fresh horseradish. I didn't go for all of that, but I would go for a salsiccia di crem, which is almost like a frankfurter. It was Viennese, salsiccia Viennese, was almost like the frankfurters today, but quite different. It was made fresh. I did have one of those. And of course, a cecchine of wine. She always had her little cecchine of wine while I had my aranciata. And then we'd go home and I would help her cook all those wonderful things. Okay. Now, let me squash some more out of this with the back of a ladle. Will do the job. And collect everything. This is also time to skim the fat off and bring it up again to simmering so it's nice and hot while we are serving. We are ready to plate. Let's begin with the Swiss chard. The plate is nice and hot. The Swiss chard is hot with the wonderful smell of garlic and the herbiness of the Swiss chard. Now you could serve it this way and present it to the table as the whole stinko, which is wonderful and majestic. I'm going to teach you one little trick. It's not a trick, it's a technique. If you have a sauce and the sauce is really not dense enough for you, you want it a little denser, how do you do it quickly? You get yourself a pan and heat it really hot, empty. And when it's really hot, you just this is the sauce, and it'll get nice and dense, just the consistency that you want it. You see it oozing down? And let's decorate it with some of its original ingredients and bring it to the table like this. Now, as a host, you might want to have a board and carve it at the table. I will show you how to carve it and how to either carve it at the table this way or make the individual presentation this way. You catch right by the bone, you hold it with the rag, kitchen rag, and there's the big muscle. You leave that for last. You begin on this side. If there's any cartilage, that you just set it aside, but it's all good. Let me tell you, it's all good. And you just begin cutting down, slice by slice. And as you hit in the bone, just sort of slide out away from the bone. Now we'll remove the muscle, the large muscle. Just clean it a little bit of the fat. And this muscle will cut across this way. I think that's enough for one portion. What do you think? I'm hungry, but I think that's enough. Top it up with some more. And just let the sauce fall down on the side over the Swiss chard. Now, this is so reminiscent of Trieste, with a little bit of red wine, Merlot wine. Merlot is a wine that is drank and that is grown in the Friuli Venezia Giulia and in the Veneto. The freshness of the grape with a stinko, it is just wonderful. And as we say in my house, tutti a tavola a mangiare.